faces. And I'm sure we'll maybe have a few other individuals, guests who will be coming here as we get on with our continuation of the estate planning. And here we're far more specific tonight with looking at endowments and continuing with some of the legality as well that Brenda will once more come forward. I would just like to start us off with prayer, and then I'm going to be introducing the next individual who will come and begin for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, we just give you thanks for this wonderful evening, and as the fall has shown us with such splendor here in northern Michigan these past couple of weeks, the colors and the majesty, as we say goodbye to summer and begin just working our way through the fall to the winter. Lord, I ask your blessing upon all of us as we've come here to look at the areas of the estate planning, questions that will be asked this evening. Hopefully answers will be offered sufficiently. And as we start looking at towards the future as well in other areas of our planning, I just pray for peace on all of us, and that we don't allow anxiety, stress, or fear to get the best of us, that we live out our life with great joy and happiness, and especially this evening as we come as a community and getting to see faces and getting down maybe new names and friends that we'll be mingling with. I ask your blessing upon our speakers for what they will be sharing. And I pray, Lord, the powerful message that they will offer us. Lord, bless in our time together, and when we will be leaving, too, we might have a safety in our returning home. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. We all say, Amen. Our Lady of Mount Carmel, pray for us. And the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. This time I'd like to invite Mariana War. She is our business manager here at Holy Childhood of Jesus and for the greater cluster as well. Mari's been, I think, a part of here now for going on 3 years, and someone whom I've known for the last 12 years. I first met her in Gaylord, and she is somebody that I have found has had a unique set of skills and a great gift of communication, and able to work with many different forums like putting one of these on right now. She had a very big part in this, as well as the Finance Council. So did Eileen and Bill. Just want to let you know, Bill has a clean bill of health. So as the Polish say, we may at one point be singing sto lat, blah, 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 blah. That means 100 years in Polish. And go, man, go. So with nothing more ado, I would invite Mariana War to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. So as Father said, I am the business manager here. I go by Mari. And on behalf of Father James and the professionals on the Planned Giving Committee, which is a subcommittee of our Parish Finance Council here at Holy Childhood, we welcome you to part 2 of our Planned Giving conversation. So as part of this conversation, I want to draw your attention to this yellow form. If you remember, if you were here last time, we took a survey, and a lot of you said you wanted the opportunity to ask questions and have them answered. But because of the sensitivity of this topic, there's some personal things that you may not be comfortable sharing aloud. So I encourage you to fill this little form out with any of your questions for any of our speakers. Fold it up and put it in the little clear bowl in front of you, and I'll come around and pick them up, and we'll try to get to those if we can. So there is also a pink survey form on your table, so if you could please review and submit that tonight. The basket for it is on the back counter. Your feedback is very important to us, so thank you in advance for your feedback. If you could please silence your cell phones. Restrooms are near the main entrance down the hall. Help yourself to coffee or wine and snacks during the event. We have plenty back there. Thank you once again, and I would like to introduce our next speaker. She is the president of the Northern Michigan Catholic Foundation, where all 4 of our cluster endowments are managed. If you see the sheet in front of you that's white, has some color, that is a description of our endowment funds. So if you have questions about what they cover. Christie is a University of Michigan grad, got her master's at Central. She's worked with community foundations and private foundations, fund development, and planned giving for more than 20 years. She's an expert in the field, and I'm pleased to introduce Christie Perdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mari. Good evening. I'm 6 foot tall, so I usually have to move the mic to adjust. Thank you guys for coming out. It's kind of a dreary evening. I'm sure you'd rather be warm in your house with a cup of tea, but thank you for coming out tonight. As Mari said, I've had the privilege of doing this for the last 5 years, talking to people about endowments and the power of endowments and legacy giving and the Northern Michigan Catholic Foundation and thinking about our parishes when we do our estate planning, and it is truly a joy. So I personally know the power of estate planning in an interesting way. I'm a recent widow. I lost my husband about a year ago in a tragic plane accident. So estate planning is real. And the good news is, if we're talking about it, and it's your gift is here, that means you're in the best place ever, right? You're in heaven. So thank you for thinking about this. Thank you for even considering estate planning, because it's super important in your parish. Whether you choose to do it or not, knowing that this is an option for you is one that is really important. And having those conversations with your family and with your friends is super important as well. So thank you again for having me tonight. Appreciate it. And I'm a walker and a talker, so this doesn't move. So if I knock it over, it's not my fault, okay? All right, Mari, can you advance? I have it in front of me, but. So a little bit about the Northern Michigan Catholic Foundation, who we are. We've been around since 1998. I've been with the organization for the last 5 years. Our assets are, it says 29 million. Just got the report recently for September. It's a little bit lower. That's from July. The markets, and I'll get to that as how we grow our funds. We're sort of taking a beating right now, but it's okay because these are here forever. That's the power of endowments. We have 81 funds, and these represent 47 from institutions. So that would be parishes, Catholic schools, Catholic organizations in Northern Michigan. 17 are what we call missionary endowments. So those would be we have a fund for marriage, we have a fund for youth, social ministry, lay ministry, a lot of different topics, seminary fund. 13 cemetery endowments, one of which is yours as well. 2 scholarship funds. We're really not in the business of scholarship funds. Those were established before I got here. And then 2 donor advised funds. So we do work with Catholic donors who are interested in establishing donor advised funds that they then work to manage with their family to give out money to various Catholic and non-Catholic causes in Northern Michigan and throughout the country. So far this year, we've awarded $508,000 in distributions, $85,000 in unrestricted grants. So we actually have our own endowment fund that also gives away money to Catholic schools. We did, for example, pregnancy resource centers recently. So a variety of unrestricted grants where we feel Catholic organizations need our help the most. And then our donor advised funds have awarded about $9,100. So a little bit about what your endowment is. Essentially, So again, they support Catholic schools, parishes establish them. I'm just giving you the background so you understand you have already endowments established. And I actually worked with your finance chair and your finance committee, and they ran me through the ringer. So you guys should be very happy to know that you have some very diligent people on those committees to make sure this was a good investment and that, A, we knew what we were doing to trust with the funds here, and then also, again, to be able to open that up to this group that might be interested in supporting those funds. But again, so St. Vincent de Paul organizations have funds with us, Knights of Columbus, we have parishes and schools, among others, donor advised funds. And the important thing to know is that they're all socially responsibly invested, which I would like to give props to our Catholic faith because we actually came up with this term. Now it's like really hip. Everybody loves to do socially responsible investing. But we did it when it wasn't cool. We started, since we began, we said, we're not going to use the money that's generated to support companies, products, missions that do not align with the Catholic faith. And we're really strict about that, as we should be. And now other people are aligning in different ways. You can be environmentally or socially responsibly invested, but ours are based on our Catholic values. And that looks different, and it's harder than you think, right? Because you have corporations that are owned by corporations that are owned by corporations. We are actually invested in an alternative method that's like a REIT, if you're familiar with that, a real estate investment tool. But this is for government-owned leases. We had to go through all of the leases independently to make sure that the government wasn't renting to Planned Parenthood in a building, that type of thing. Because all the buildings that, they try to own where the FBI is, and they're really long-term leases. Anyway, I'm getting off track. But just know, we do our homework. So does the company that we work with, our investment managers. They do their homework, and it's something that we take very seriously. It's not just a selling point for us. With more than 30 invested, actually, it was more than 30, it's like 27 now. All of those funds are pooled together. So let's just say our 30 million, of which your funds are included, are invested in the market. And they're invested for long-term growth. So we actually have, and I'll get to that slide in a minute, but and I'll go through each of those percentages, but know that the strategy behind this is long-term growth. So we know that we're in a bad market right now, or we're inching our way towards one or from one. It's all depends on who you listen to, but we're down 13% so far this year. That's year to date as of September 30th. Last year, our funds collectively earned over 13%. You can see 13% in 2020, and actually the banner year, I'm sure you all felt it as well, 2019. But overall, a 5-year earning is 6.3%, which I actually had to go back a couple times and look at that number because I thought, how is it so high? But that negative 13% really averages that out, and then the year before. What's our asset mix? So we get asked this a lot. So if you think we just made a change to move from, and again, I apologize if I'm going into too much detail here, but my goal is that you guys really understand the entity that's investing these funds. And so, again, I'm going to run through this, and we can always come back if you have more specific questions, or if you do, I should have said that in the beginning, feel free to raise your hand. So currently 75% are passively managed. We were 50-50, we just moved to 75% passively managed, 25% actively, and then 62% equities. I just made a transfer today to move that up to 63%. Fixed income is 29%, and alternatives is 10%. 10% is the height of our target range for alternatives, so we will not be any higher there. Alternatives are also the hardest ones for us to socially ensure that are socially responsibly invested. So that one is REITs would be in there, those types of alternative investments. Again, not that alternative for institutional investing. So what happens, again, is that NMCF invests this money and then calculates an annual distribution. So how does the money, this answers the question, how does it come back to the parish? So every year, Mari and Father James are sent a letter that says, your distribution this year is this amount, and it's 4.5%, that's what it's been the last 5 years, 4.5% of the total fund balance. Now that 4.5% is determined by our board each year, and it could change. Industry standards are between 4 and 5% for distributions from endowments across the board. So that's how that base amount is determined. Now, if we go and we have the next 5 years of negative growth, you will get to a point, and some of your newer funds are going to get there a lot sooner, where we won't be able to let you grant any money. We won't be able to grant any money back because that would invade your principal. For our other funds that have been well established, their principal amounts are the smallest part of their fund, and the majority of their fund is earned growth at this point. So we can't eat into that to ensure that that 4.5% is maintained. But some of our newer funds, like yours, we're going to have to make a recommendation and have you talk to your finance counsel that next year might not be a good year for you to take a distribution, or you might not be able to take a distribution because of the negative growth that we had this year. So again, the goal is always to ensure that there's a distribution, but sometimes if that comes at the price of eating into that principal, that's what we're not able to do. That's the hard part. That's when my job's not fun, when I have to tell people, well, we're here for the long haul. I promised those donors that the principal would not be invaded, and so we can't actually invade that principal. That's when it's not so much fun to be in endowments. It's really fun to be in endowments when you get to give away a lot of money, and they don't even know where it came from. They're like, wait a minute, we have this giant check this month or this year. So it's the good and the bad. My hunch is I have a very conservative investment committee. I'm feeling as though they might make a recommendation to reduce that 4.5% annual distribution percentage down. Although there's foundations, Grand Rapids Catholic Foundation has been 4.5% since their inception 30 years ago, and they have no intention of ever changing that number. So, it just kind of depends on the makeup of the investment group, how conservative they are, and really the growth in the investments. How much does all this cost, right? You're probably thinking that. This is my favorite part of my job because the number is so extremely low that people think it's wrong. So usually if you go to a foundation, a private foundation, not a community foundation, you start a fund, it's a 1% fee right off the bat. I'm sure you're all really familiar with that. Then on top of that, there might be another fee, there might be an administrative fee and an investment management fee. We don't have a set percentage. Sounds kind of crazy, right? We don't have a set percentage. It's actually what it costs us to run the organization. So we don't have, it's based on our budget. If we need growth, we build that into the budget. Last year, it was 0.72% in administrative fees, and that included investment manager fees. Right now, so far, we're at 0.54%. Like I said, I have a really conservative investment committee and board of directors. So it's literally, I've been in foundation work my entire life. It's the lowest percentage I've ever seen. And it's great, and I think the selling point, and again, I really struggled with understanding this when I first came to here. I thought, no, it's gotta be 1%. How do we grow the organization, and how do we do things? And my board member looked at me and said, what are we going to do with the other 30%? We're going to put it in another endowment fund for us? That doesn't seem right. So I'm like, gosh, I never thought of it like that. So yeah, so the money's going back. So we're only using what we need to run the organization, to make sure our software is up to date, to make sure that staff are paid, to make sure that we can come to things like this, make sure that we can do the marketing, that people know who we are. So other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Any questions on that? I know I went through a lot of numbers. Yes, Carl.
So you went through the results of the past years and so forth. Let's say we had our capital endowment created 10 years ago. The years prior to this year have been like 4 or 5 years in a row of great stock market returns, 15, 20% or so forth. So our endowment fund would have grown substantially. Does the parish have any say in how much we can draw down? Should we have a huge building project and say, hey, we've had a lot of growth here, why can't we tap more than 4.5%?
That's a great question. You do have a fund that was established in 2014, actually at $75,000. That's now just over $100,000 that has experienced that growth. The answer to that is no. Sorry. That's what my job is. It's one of the hardest parts of my job, but I have to be true to what that fund was established for. So I know we built those documents, your fund agreement documents that state what the fund is for, and the whole purpose was that this is supposed to be available forever. Capital projects come and go, new kitchens come and go, rectories come and go, parking lots come and go. So we know that that can be a stress on parishes.
Still only be drawing down the earnings that we've already achieved.
But in doing so in the short term, when you do have a negative year, you've now removed your cushion to be able to continue the distributions at that level. Because if you, for example, said, I want all that $25,000 that one fund has earned in the last 10 years, but then next year you're like, well, where's our distribution, Christie? So you have actually, in taking that in the short term, you have affected the long-term trajectory of us being able to give you a distribution. So unfortunately, but that's why the endowment is only one of the tools that the parishes use to protect for their future and plan for their future. So a really healthy, just like a healthy retirement, right? You have your savings, you have your capital funds for emergencies, you have your different pots, and one of them is your IRA or your retirement planning. So that varied, in a true healthy parish, this would be one of the tools but you shouldn't be relying on that to be what you need to do capital projects, unless, for example, it's your capital fund, in which case you actually have an endowment fund for capital needs that you would be able to use, which in fact there is. I can't remember, did we do we talked about it, but I think you guys struggled with that a little bit because we thought, well, how could this capital fund, give us big amounts of money? And it can store up into the sub-account, and there are ways that you can have the fund act. You can have your distribution go into your sub-fund in which that can build, so you could actually take a larger amount. So there are ways that it can be more helpful. Yes?
I didn't understand that. I thought you told us.
Yes, yep. So one of the tools, so it's always 4.5%, but one of the tools that all of the funds have, or actually most of our funds, your first fund actually doesn't have this tool, is what we call a sub-account. So a sub-account exists so that you're able to take a distributions, let them build up should you want to plan for a capital project. So you're still only getting 4.5%, but it's a way to keep the money in the market, but allow your fund, your sub-account to grow, or spendable fund or sub-account can grow. You can also put donations in there. It does have a ceiling, though. It cannot exceed 1/3 the value of the fund.
Okay, if I understood you, the way to get more than 4.5 would be leaving some of the 4.5s in there.
Exactly.
And then you can use it somewhere down the road.
Yep, and it's a tool because a lot of times we had people saying, I don't need it this year, Christie, but I should probably take it because otherwise I lose it, right? And we thought, well, that's not great planning on our part, so we did create this tool. Now, it's important, I'm probably getting into the weeds, but the sub-fund balance only grows by putting things into it. It's in the market, but those earnings go into your principal fund. So like if you have $25,000 in your sub-fund, it's always going to be 25 unless a donor puts money in or you put a distribution there. But you have to think of that 25,000 as still working for you. You're just seeing those results in the principal. Good questions. Anything else? Awesome. NMCF and the Diocese of Gaylord. So we get this question a lot. So we exist to support the diocese. We don't have a reason to exist otherwise, support the Catholic faith within Northern Michigan. However, it's important to know that we are a separate organization, a separate 501c3 number. The bishop by position sits on our board. So I've now worked with 3 bishops. He sits by position on our board and is a non-voting member. And it's really important in a great relationship that we understand what the diocese is doing and some of their goals, and they're actually collectively the largest entity that has funds with us. They have 19 of those 81 funds are diocesan funds. So we have a great relationship with them, but it's probably important for you to know that we are completely separate. And those funds, one of the questions I get sometimes are how would those be affected if there was some sort of legal challenges within the diocese? And we've seen in other dioceses, and case law has proven that the foundation endowments for parishes in the diocese are completely separate from any liability that a diocese could ever have. So, any questions there? Okay. All right, well, let's talk about you guys specifically. I still don't know, how do you say this, Mari? Wait, can you advance? Sorry, I'm advancing there. How do you say that, you guys? Can you tell me? Okay, gotcha, perfect. So you have 6 funds with us. The Holy Childhood Farley Family Fund was the first fund established, that was established in 2014 with an establishing gift from a donor. So probably a name that maybe many of you recognize. That is often a tool that donors use. So we're talking about estate planning. Some donors establish a fund on behalf of a parish, and the parish is the beneficiary. And the donor can then establish it and then seed it with their estate, so that we see that happen quite often. We also see where donors will choose to leave a donation to the parish through their estate, an estate gift to the parish directly, with the restriction that it is for their endowment. The parish could then choose which endowment they wanted to put that in. The other option is that the donor could give it directly to NMCF, restricted for one of these funds specifically. And I'll get into the details of each of them. But know that you have 6, and they were newly established, and you know how the market goes. You can never time things, right? But let's just say we could have gone in at a better time than probably December, or was it last fall you guys went in. So it's been a little bit of a painful ride, but I anticipate that we'll be able to see some of those returns. Mari, can you advance? So this is kind of a breakdown of each of the funds, and I will send this PowerPoint. I did send this PowerPoint, but if anyone wants this page, I think you have specifically the statement of purpose, but I'm not sure if you have all of the details of the funds. So you'll see spendable available. The Farley Family Fund does not have that option. So some of our funds were created, and the intent was this. The donor knew either spend it or keep it in the endowment. The donor did not want the ability to grow a spendable fund, and that's donor-based. So a lot of our scholarship funds are like that. A lot of our school funds are like that. So if you've been a part of a Catholic school, you know that there's probably never been a year that they didn't need money. So the question is, if you have a school endowment, use it. Don't put it in the spendable. But also the zeros were that you guys just went in there as one in last October. So you really don't have any distributions that you would have put in there, or there have been gifts made to some of the funds, but you do see a loss from the starting balance. So at this point, some of those funds are not going to be able to make a distribution in the next year. But again, that's really, hi, I'm here doing this great presentation, I have to tell you that. But truly, we would recommend that you don't, unless you absolutely have to at this point, but that will build up, and when I come back to do another presentation in a couple of years, you'll be like, wow, Christy, look at all that growth. Now it's close to 50. Any questions with this slide at all? Oh yeah, Josie.
Read the top, what's in green.
Oh, sure. So the first one is the Holy Childhood Farley Family Fund. So this was the first fund that you had, the only fund you had actually for a long time. The last the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have been established since you guys got here, since, in the last 3 years, really 2 years. So there's the Holy Childhood of Jesus Catholic Church Cemetery Fund. And I believe, Mari, correct me, you guys have done an appeal specifically for this fund, haven't you? Yep. So that fund has seen some natural growth from an appeal that you guys have done. Then the Holy Childhood of Jesus of Harbor Springs Capital Maintenance Fund. So this is a fund, and I applaud, again, your finance committee who spent a lot of time figuring out exactly the wording of this fund. And the word annual is not in there. This is really designed for capital needs, large-scale capital needs that you might have. And again, that also had an initial establishing amount and then has seen donations since. The Holy Childhood of Jesus of Harbor Springs Catechetical and, I'm not saying that right, am I? Catechetical and Outreach Fund. This one is really a beautiful fund to think about as your growth within the church in ways that your ministries can grow. I think this is one of my favorite sort of visionary funds that exist and ways that you guys can really expand what you do and how you work with parishioners in the community. And then the Holy Childhood of Jesus of Harbor Springs Endowment Fund. So this would be the unrestricted one. This would be the one that would be most, if you were like, I know that I want to support the future, but I'm not sure exactly where. I know I want it to be an estate gift. I know I want it to go to NMCF. This one is very open and unrestricted, and we want it that way, right? Because we don't know in 50 years what needs the church will have. So I really encourage most of my endowment funds, if they're setting up multiple ones, that one is really, not to say unrestricted, but to be open-ended for capital or annual needs or whatever the future holds for the parish. And then St. Ignatius, why do I not have, oh, to support and preserve the St. Ignatius Church. So that one is an unrestricted endowment for that parish. It's important to note that these are assets permanently and forever restricted for those organizations, but they're actually held, they are assets of the Northern Michigan Catholic Foundation. So again, it is our legal duty to ensure that those funds only go to those parishes and for those intended need. Josie, do you have a question?
Just a follow-up, I love the growth of all of these except two.
Right.
The catechesis and the open fund. Could you explain how we lost?
Most likely, without looking at it in depth, which I can certainly do, my hunch is that those have not had any donations to them, and so they're only experiencing negative growth in the market. The other ones had donations to them, and so the negative growth is not as dramatic because of the donations that were received.
So what's the value add of putting in to the endowment?
Yeah, so thank you, great question. So really what you can see is that as the endowment grows, it can sort of weather some of that turmoil, so with a poor market, and so as donations grow and build, you're able to protect that principal, grow that principal. The more money that's in there, the more money that it's gonna churn and make. And that's really the benefit of pulling it all together as well, because, you know, instead of just investing your $25,000 in the market, your $25,000 is part of $30 million that is invested in the market, and that earning power is maximized. So, yeah, great, yes.
So for the donor that is making a charitable contribution for the year, how do they make that donation? Do they make it to the parish and restrict it to a particular fund? If that's where they want it to go?
Sure. So there's really there's a couple of things. There's an annual gift that a donor could give to any of those funds. And it could really go either way, whatever the donor prefers. So some donors find it easier just to say, here, Mari, here's my check for the endowment. And included in that is my yearly giving to the parish. So I write one check to Mari and I tell her what the difference is. And then Mari would send the check to NMCF, super easy. The other option would be to give to NMCF directly, intended for one of those funds. So the key with if you gave to us directly would to let us know what fund you wanted it to go into so that we could make sure that we honored that. And then the annual funds, if you want to, you know, go in even deeper, you could in fact give to the spendable portion of the fund. So if you wanted to say, well, I want it invested, but I also want Mari and Father James to have access to it, then you could give to the spendable. Estate gifts, in my opinion, really, if you think about what your intent is as an estate gift, right? Did I answer your question? Does that make sense? Yes.
I have a question. So
Sure.
If I'm writing the check directly to the fund, does the IRS recognize the fund?
The IRS your receipt letter from us would state both our tax ID number, but it would state in the letter that you've given to the Northern Michigan Catholic Foundation restricted for, and we actually put the fund name in your receipt letter. So yes, the IRS does recognize that as a tax deductible donation through us, and we're able to acknowledge that it's specific to a fund. Yes. Lots of questions. All right, Josie, and then yeah.
Just a third follow-up.
Yeah.
If I want to be specific and not have it go into a larger fund, but I want it to go to Holy Childhood, will there be instructions on precisely how those dollars will go to Holy Childhood or to the Catholic churches of Lower Crook?
Yes, so if you so each of those under that statement of purpose, and I think you have a copy of, they have that, right, Mari? So in front of you is the description of each of those. So those really detail exactly how those distributions will come back. But the beauty of an estate gift into an endowment, in my opinion, is that it lives forever. So But some donors look at me and go, Christie, I don't want my gift to live forever. I want the parish to use it right away. And then I have the hard conversation. I say, well, then you should just give it to the parish directly and let them use it in the way that they need to right now. Other donors say, no, like that's the whole point. I don't want Father James to go build a new garden. I don't want Father James to go redo the kitchen in the rectory. I want my gift to stay intact always and forever, earning money for the parish that I love. So it's really a perspective on where the donor fits that they really feel. Is it more immediate, or do you want to see your gift, your estate gift, stay intact and always be earning? So that's the question. And then I'll be right.
For anybody interested, can you help us access and track the actual holdings?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can send out monthly statements. We send them to the finance committee. I would not be able to send them to donors directly, but I will send them to Tom and Carl, and they can be accessed there. I will say this though, endowments, you know how they tell you not to look at your retirement plan until, like don't look at it if you don't have to look at it right now? Endowments are kind of the same way, because the snapshot of an endowment, a monthly report on an endowment, tells such like a tiny piece of the entire story of the fund. So I like annual statements, and I actually think a lot of parishes, when they do their annual reporting in their bulletin, include copies of their annual statements for their funds, which I think is really beneficial, because then you can kind of see a full snapshot of it. And then you guys can call me and we can talk about how bad the investments did together, and I can walk you through that. So.
Not interested monthly, just every so often.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should, because if this is where your estate is going, you want to know, how it's doing. Absolutely.
Just for purposes of filming and you're speaking, we have questions, and we're not sure what the question is. So
Oh, can we repeat it? Yes.
So one of you all can hear it.
Yes.
And we're also being filmed as well. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Question.
You make the important distinction, endowments are for the long term. When times are good and it's in that long term, and you get a 4.5% distribution, is it by fund?
Yes. So the question is it 4.5% by fund? And the answer is yes. So you would get I don't do 6 different checks from Mari, but I would do one check with 6 4.5% distributions in there for the parish. Yep, absolutely. Great question. Yes.
2 questions. Who are your investment managers, and how do you define, your socially responsible investment?
Great questions. Who is our investment manager? We work with Cap Trust out of Florida, actually, and the Michigan Catholic Conference, MCC. So MCC is actually the entity that we send them, and Cap Trust is our investment managers. So they tell us, I just had a conference call with them saying, okay, where are we with our ratios and our investments? And so together with Cap Trust, with MCC, but the real group that's guiding a lot of this is our own investment manager committee. Our investment committee is made up of professionals in Northern Michigan who are really involved with this. We try to get diverse opinions and different groups together and different voices at the table. So we sort of have the best of both worlds. We have this group of people who are looking at it and monitoring it. We have professionals that work almost exclusively with dioceses and Catholic organizations throughout the country and have billions invested, and it's almost like too big. But with that comes the power of understanding our investments in a different way. So it's a nice balance. And I will say that diverse opinions are good. I like investment meetings where we're talking about it and we're going back and forth and we want to hear different sides, because I have been all over this diocese in all different rooms. I've been in kitchens where people, don't believe you should put any money in the stock market, and I've been in all sorts of different places. So it depends on who you ask how you should invest, right? But with institutional investing, you can't just ride the wave of one opinion. And I've seen that happen in a group. I've seen where someone's like, we need to be in real estate. And then by the end of it, everyone's like, yeah, we need to be more in real estate. And people are like, oh, I think we're going to invest more in real estate. And it's like, whoa. We have a plan, we have an investment policy, we have a goals, and our committee helps keep that. And then we make very small movements if we make any movements. We're never jumping in and out of things quickly. Because again, we're here for the long run. We've been doing this for a long time, and we want to make sure those are really smart moves. And your second question was?
Define the socially responsible investment.
Right. that is on our website. It's very detailed. It includes Cap Trust running through, they manually run through our investments looking for key things, right? So we look for drug companies that make birth control. They look for tobacco is removed. Any sort of industry that might be, there's a list of them, of things, different industries. And that's where MCC, the Michigan Catholic Conference, they're involved with that as well. So again, trying to decide. But there's, to be honest, it's getting more complicated as things get more intertwined. But again, they do a really great job of ensuring that those key entities are not invested in. And we've done a lot of research to say, has this cost us money? Not that we care, right? But has it ever cost us money? And right before I came on the board, we did have a board member kind of go through and say, well, what if we would have been invested in these, key drug companies and these key things? And it actually was not, it was a wash. Like, we didn't lose any money, we didn't gain it. It was kind of interesting to see. So I think that kind of shows somebody's on our side. Yes?
Do you have criteria that stipulate how much is going to be under active management versus passive management?
Like within we just moved from 75% to, we made that decision because honestly, we felt like in this market, that the investment managers were not performing how we wanted them to, that we thought that the market itself, just being in mutual funds would be enough to when you pay for an active manager, you're paying for them to beat the market, right? And so we weren't seeing that, to be quite honest. And so we actually reduced that amount. The diocese did as well at the same time. We actually share 2 committee members with the diocese as well, who also has an investment council, investment committee. So no, we really don't have a clear percentage on that, but we also want that flexibility. We wanted to move to 100%, and we thought that might be a little aggressive, and so the committee decided it landed on 75% actually just in August.
So the investment managers that weren't performing, you moved money to be more passively managed. Did you retain those investment managers, or did you hire new ones?
Oh, we're still working with the investment so we have the investment managers through Cap Trust. So we're still working with them. They're happy, to be quite honest, because we're paying them to manage this money for us. But it was really in the best interest, and we're going to see benefits from it, I think, in the short term. And again, I think when the market is in a different state, it makes more sense to be working actively versus passively. So I think that's the nature of our investment committee as well, to kind of make those decisions as we go. Good question. Any other questions? All right. We can advance. Okay. I think I'm good on time. Oh, yes. Leverage. I'm sorry. Do your managers use any leverage? Do you mean? No, not really. We're trying, not with the institutional investing that we do. It's really, that would be a little too dramatic, I think, for us and for this type of investing, but good question. Okay, so why give to your parish endowment? Questions, right? So by supporting your parish endowment, you are supporting the future and long-term growth and stability. So we know that, right? People say, well, why wouldn't I just give to the parish? I think we kind of talked about that earlier too. That's a great option and one you should consider. But if you know that you want your estate gift to be protected and to continue earning, it would be the endowment option for you. And that it'll live forever, always supporting the parish in that endowment through NMCF. One of the questions we get is, what happens if this parish doesn't exist anymore? What if Harbor Springs is gone, or what if, everyone moves out and this is like where no one wants to be, right? There's a clause in the fund that says that our role at NMCF is to make sure that wherever these parishioners are, that money follows them. So if this parish were to get closed, the next parish where they were to be directed to go would be the one that supported that. So it's always our mission to ensure that the money follows the donor's intent, and the donor's intent was to support the parishioners here within this building and within your cluster. And so we would ensure that would carry on. But the other great thing about endowments is that the bigger the endowment, the less likely the church is going to be closed. And I say that, and it's also true, because I think as you see those parishes, and we see this in little bitty parishes all over, that don't have the support of this parish, but as they build their endowment, they're building that future protection to ensure that the building can always be maintained, and that hopefully there's still a parish alive in it forever. So we like to say it's a gift that truly does last a lifetime. Important to know what it is not, okay? So a gift to your parish endowment is not a gift that if you want to support a one-time capital. So if you want to say, I want to give to Father James's new kitchen, okay, it would not be through your endowment, right? You would want to give that directly here. It does not provide immediate access for the pastor or the finance council, good or bad, right? Because I like to say that we might like our finance council right now, but in 10 years, it might be a whole different finance council. Kind of goes back to one of your questions, like access. And I always say access is great if you love the people around the table. Access is scary when that group changes, and it's a whole new group of finance council members who are like, whoa, look at all that money we got at NMCF. Let's get that out and let's, do something really fun. Let's all go to Italy, let's do something crazy. And it does not count towards weekly giving. So, that's just something to consider as you're giving, like this would be in addition to what you're already giving to the parish. And then finally, close to my final slide, this is, you can advance that, Mari. This is in the back of this brochure so this little plant, I realize that it's probably not that clear for you on the screen, but it is in the brochure in your document, and it just kind of talks a little bit about specific vehicles, their benefit, and how they might work for you. So I won't go into those details, but know that this exists in the back of this brochure. The other thing that I would mention to you, and this is a personal choice from every donor, but it's something I always say, is that if you're thinking about doing this, it's so important for numerous reasons that the parish know about your intent. One, so that they can thank you in person, if that's important. But two, so that everyone can be on the same page at what your vision is for this fund. I can't tell you the amount of time that a parish just goes, we just got a $50,000 estate gift. We have no idea what to do with it, and we have no idea what they'd like to see done with it. And so one of the things that we're able to do in our system is to track, so we would build a profile for you. We would attach all of your estate documents, and we would make sure that when that estate was realized, that every intention that you had on our end would be met in its entirety. But we can't do that if we don't know that information. So for example, I just did one for somebody where they left their parish as their IRA beneficiary. So they actually provided the letter that stated that they sent to their IRA provider. And then they also sent it to me. So I was able to attach all of that to their profile, and I was able to link the church right to their profile so that if and when we receive a check from that person's estate, we know exactly where it's meant to go. And it was interesting, I had not run into this before, but the estate would not let them specify a fund. The IRA beneficiary would not let them go to the next level, saying more than NMCF, which I'd never seen that before. So they actually had to do a special document that went with their form. It kind of mentions somewhere there's a lot of different forms for these beneficiaries. And so I had never seen that. So something to think about so that we can make sure it gets in the right spot is to ensure that if you are filling out those beneficiary forms, that it's not just Northern Michigan Catholic Foundation, but it is in fact the parish or the fund that you want to support. That's my contact information. That's my phone number, email. If you have any additional questions, we're here to help. But just know, I know this is a big choice, but know that I always say this, and I really mean it. I mean, I can't think of a better place to put your future estate than here at your parish, because this is the most important place, right? Yes.
A question, there's a different address in the brochure. Do you have two offices?
You know what? Oh, that was our old, is that one say Traverse City? Yeah, that's our old, we changed recently. Also, you have our 2020 annual report, because it's really hard to get stuff printed right now. So we have our 2020 2021 annual report, I'd be happy to share that or email that to anybody, but you're looking at our 2020 annual report in that folder. And I should say that folder was designed because I realized that the other folders that you get, like the ones from school, they don't actually fit in a file hanging place very easily. So we created ours so that you could kind of put all of those materials in there, and then it actually should fit right into your file folder with all of your estate plans. So that was kind of the design of that document. Yes, Carl.
Steve, we talked before the meeting about how you benchmark your performance against industry. S&P for equities is easy, fixed incomes, there's a number of fixed income measurements, but what about alternatives?
Alternative, it's difficult. It's really difficult. And in fact, I will tell you, we are at the height of our target for alternatives. Usually I will repeat the question. The question was, how do you benchmark alternatives? You can benchmark equities through the S&P 500, which we do. You can benchmark fixed income. Alternatives are more difficult. It's a roundabout benchmark that we're actually not thrilled with, and how we've done a lot of work to kind of get that narrowed down to precisely what we think with Cap Trust. But I will say this: we're at the height of our target for.
That's asset allocation, not performance.
No, that's what I'm saying. But we are at the height of our asset allocation at 10%, and usually it's about 4.5%. So usually, truly, alternatives are not as high in. They're only like 4.5% of our entire portfolio. But
That says they're doing pretty well.
But yes, so also that's the thing. They've been doing really well, and so we've been increasing our amount in them. But again, that one it's harder to track performance because it's so varied. You could have alternatives be all real estate. You could have alternatives be a mixture of, who knows? They're alternatives. It can be gold. I don't know. We're not buying gold, just so you know. But yeah, good question. Other questions? Yes, Tom.
Christie, your chart showed for your asset allocation, equities, fixed assets, and alternates. But you have a number of fund managers in each one of those categories, certainly in equities, small cap, medium cap, large cap, and other. How many fund managers is Northern Michigan Catholic Foundation using now? I know that Cap Trust manages the whole portfolio, but
Yeah.
your local board decides on what percentage and evaluates your fund managers against similar managers in the subcategory of equities, for example, that you would.
I would have to look at our last report, Tom, but off the top of my head, I want to say maybe 12 total. I'm trying to think about like across the top of my report. I don't have the exact number, but yes, there's multiple ones within each of those three categories, yes. And so we're able to move between them pretty easily. The other thing too is in working through MCC, there are some, for example, we couldn't get into a REIT. Our investment committee was just chomping at the bit. We had one individual. We want to get into a REIT. We want to get into a real estate investment option. And there wasn't one available to us, mostly because of the socially responsible investing limitations that we had and the unknowns that came with that. And so Cap Trust really worked to identify one that would fit, and that was that government lease option that I was talking about earlier. So point being that they are harder to socially responsibly manage, and they are more unique, yes. Tom?
Just to follow up a point, that when you're evaluating your fund managers, there are several other fund managers that you can compare them to. So it's not like you're taking all the equities and comparing to the S&P 500.
Great point, yes.
Other fund managers who specialize in small cap companies or medium caps or whatever the category would be. And when we talk, I saw evidence where fund managers were actually replaced.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because of a performance evaluation, which really impressed me that it wasn't just words, you were actually executing that plan.
Yes, and slowly phased out, I think, is a good term. Again, going back to having some concerns, stating those concerns, and then slowly sort of moving, like, this is not getting better with this one. management group. And I probably should say too, and I always say this wrong, we have investment consultants, that's the cap trust, right? And then the investment managers are the individual groups, and I kind of always mix those two words up. So the managers are those individual managers within each of those categories, and then cap trust is sort of the overarching group that finds the right ones that they think we should all be using and sort of puts us in that. Another question?
Do you have a minimum dollar amount to be invested? So if I want to make a charitable donation or an endowment?
So, yep, great question. So to start a fund with us, there's a minimum of a $10,000 balance to start any fund with us, any endowment fund. But to give a donation, no, there's not. You could give $1 to an existing fund. You could give $100,000 to an existing fund. There's no minimum on a donation to an existing fund. But again, to start a fund, it would have to be a minimum of $10,000, which is another option. Again, if I'm kind of laying out all the options again, is to think about like the Farley fund that exists. That was created as a result of a donor gift. So if there's not something that the donor feels fits with what they want to give to, for whatever reason, or they want to specifically have their name on their own endowment, they could in fact start their own for whatever purpose. We would just want to make sure that we brought, Father James in to make sure that it represented something that they were willing to accept the gift for, that type of thing. But that's always an option for donors as well. More questions? We also have, yes, Tom.
Christie, apologize for this comment. When we talked, you wanted to sort of manage the number of funds for each organization. So I'd like a little bit of clarification because if somebody came in with $10,000, you probably wouldn't want to establish a named fund for $10,000. And I was thinking that the threshold would probably be $500,000 or $1 million or some larger number, even, perhaps over a period of time. And I think the Finance Council saw some benefit of having a parish-wide concentration so that we can all share, we can all participate in the achievement of a particular fund, rather than splitting it so many ways to add to the administrative burden and so forth. So any comments that you could share to clarify
Yes.
would be very helpful.
Thank you, Tom. So Tom's question, and I'm giggling because I talked Tom out of doing a lot of funds, originally, because there's, you think at first we want to do a fund for this, we want to do a fund for this, we want to do a fund for that, right? But truly, I'm going to try to rephrase his question, which was, what is the benefit of having multiple funds for a parish versus just having one? The truth of the matter is that I would really talk anyone out of starting a fund for this parish right now. If you came to me and said, Christy, here's $500,000, I want to start my own endowment fund for Holy Childhood, I would say, let's talk about that. So, because truly, the vehicles exist for you guys to be able to give through your estate in any of those means that you want to give. But Tom, it is fair of me, I have to be fair to say that a donor could, in fact, do that should they want to, for whatever personal reasons, start their own fund with that name specific for the parish. Yes, I would try my darndest to talk them out of it and to route them towards an existing fund for you, but I do have to mention that that is an option for donors to do, and we do see that sometimes, and sometimes it makes sense for the donor for whatever reason to do it that way. But yeah, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. But I don't recommend it.